Thank you for joining us, Rise and Grind on the Morning Grind, the segment we do in the mornings for the Grinding for Greatness show, which I'm very happy with, and we're getting some great feedback. So we wanted to bring you the Morning Grind and just talk about what's going on right now in the sport of wrestling, the great sport of wrestling. And we've got a really cool guest here. So, Jordan, introduce our guest.
Man, so this guy is someone I have known more than half of my life now. So everybody knows that I have the North Florida Wrestling Show, one. So he's my first guest there, the first person to say, yeah, I'll go on and try this crazy experiment that you're doing. But I've known him since I was a child, and he has given me numerous opportunities to improve as a person and as a wrestler. Even though I did not go to his school, I'm sure he really wanted me to a little bit, but it was still super supportive and always excited to see me grow and improve and become a better wrestler. But it is Jeff Skipper. And anybody that in North Florida knows who Jeff Skipper is because he's been around from, I believe, Mariana, Arnold, Mosley, and then just helping out here and there a little bit. You're never too far. Every time you say you're getting out of wrestling, lo and behold, you get pulled back in. But it is North Florida's own Jeff Skipper. Jeff, what's going on?
Appreciate the introduction, man. It's one of those things that I do love the sport, and and I do appreciate guys like you that bring this. You put the grind into this, man, and you put a lot of work into bringing this information and just love of wrestling. And it really shines through, and I'm glad you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I forget, you really do forget how long you know people in the wrestling community until you like sit back and think it's like, oh man, I've known you half of my life. Like you remember me when I was a little kid.
Yeah, I definitely do, and I remember how much it's amazing how you develop those friendships, and I remember everybody on my team at the state championship. Oh my God, you had your connections with Bay County, and we had this drought of over 20 years without a state champion. And even though you were from here, even though you weren't in that one of our schools, but we loved you, man, and we appreciate what you've done for the sport in this area too.
Yeah, first of all, let me thank you for coming on. This is the first time I actually met you, but when Jordan told me your name, the name rung a bell. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I remember him, and when we were back in the green room, we were kind of talking about Richie McClanahan, and that's how I knew you because my son wrestled him at one of the tournaments you were at. And yeah, it's great to have you. You were a really great coach. I remember a lot of those guys that you coached, and that was a good year. 15, 16 was a really good year. Would you say that was one of your better years coaching, or did you have better years that you can remember?
I think that year we ended up third, I think, in the state, and we had Lake Highland Prep there, man, and there was a couple years, third and fifth class we've ever. It was a great year. We had two state champions that year, and boys side. A few years later, we had two state champions that were girls, and so my state champion crews came in pairs, so that was always a cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we were talking about Richie McClanahan, and Jordan, you told me that you've known McClanahan since you were a little guy. His mom was your teacher?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I knew Richie when he was a little kid. Like, obviously, his mom knew me and my brother when we were a little kid. And then, so it's actually a longer story. And, I guess I'm going into it if y'all don't mind.
Go for it.
So, Skip, you remember the Back in Blue Club that my dad and I had started over, back in Panama City at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of club wrestling, or at least that I didn't know of. So it was like, I think a lot of that was that we got a little bit spoiled with middle school wrestling. And so we will, that was always a thing. And it's like, okay, you could get these kids, even if they just did in season, they got 3 years of understanding what wrestling is, going to practice 5 days a week, getting into a system. And then you had these high school coaches that could be like, okay, I have kids that are not starting from ground zero. So, and I think we got a little bit spoiled on that. But I had always wanted to get, I was like, wrestling was my thing, right? I was that kid that got picked last for everything. So once I found wrestling, I was like, I want to do this literally every single day. So, there wasn't a lot of opportunities, and, my dad was working over at Everett right there by Rutherford. We thought I was going to go there for the longest time, but the situation worked out where they're like, yeah, you guys can have this annex, put a mat up, and we started a club. And we had been there for about 3 years, kind of grinding, and we were getting a decent amount of people, but as far as the high level guys that I needed to be training with all the time, it was like hit or miss. Or for example, so we took a team to Disney, right? Before we even knew what that really was. We entered the All-Star division, right?
Oh,
We had no clue what we were getting into. We thought like it was like, okay, we'll do all right. We put together an all-star team of people who had like we had three kids that went to state. We had like two placers on the team, right? We got wrecked, dude. Everybody else was like, and nothing to them, but like they would have been okay at the county level. We lost every match. Like not every we lost every dual meet. And then I went like two and like whatever. I came back ready to get better, right? I'm like, all right, cool. This proves that I got to get a lot better. But nobody else showed up, right? Brock Carlin was the only one who showed up. He was in second grade. So like it's like that was when we kind of had already been thinking about moving to Swanee. So that was kind of the last thing. We're like, all right, we're leaving, and we felt bad because it's like we're leaving a void, but somebody stepped in. Who was it that stepped in and made Back in Black? Somebody made Back in Black over at Arnold, and it
I
was
remember.
That was,
I rem-
I mean, Back in Black, that was going to be crazy. P.T. Moore, Nick Moore's father.
oh, rest in peace, baby.
Yeah, he was a good dude. Roxanne Turnipseed. You
Rest in peace, baby.
know, I know, and it's I look at whenever they canceled middle school wrestling, we kind of got together and and I said, hey, I'll help you guys, but you guys really need to make it happen. And then you got David Kozad and Brian Gerard and those guys, the coaches that did that, and later on they became my high school coaches. They came on up there, Richie, Big Rich McClanahan. He was just great about taking the kids everywhere. But David and Brian, they were just amazing guys that really built that program. But and like you said, the two people I mentioned, PP and Roxanne, their kids both wrestled for me, and they both passed. But I was thinking the other day about how when we sit there and we created that, and you also had the middle school coach Wes over there that he was the guy that was kind of the head coach, and then you had Brian and
That was my first high school. That was my first coach ever too. Oh,
Wes Landon. Yeah.
oh, dude, I love me some West Landon, dude.
And then Wes Smith came in. So there's we had some great guys that just and so much of it is just showing up and have somebody commit it, and they did a great job for them. But the Back in Black came out of your Back in Blue, and so we still have the name, but
Dude, we thought that was the coolest thing, dude. We were like that made us so happy. Like one that like that was so like everything about it. Like that made the move I think a lot easier for my dad and I seeing that another club like sprung in and filled the void. And then not only that, but was able to kind of push it a little bit further. But I mean, because that's the thing. It's the club programs that's going to make it a lot better. You need that club program,
yeah,
or that presence or an area for. So Zane got started in our club.
yep.
Like he got started earlier than he normally would have. Had that, or you never know, dude. That's why I'm excited for middle school wrestling get put back into for Bay County, which I hear.
So that
You know,
I just after 23 years, I left Bay County and I'm over in Walden County, and you know what we have middle school wrestling over there. So
that's huge.
and what's really cool is there's a connection with you, Jordan, is that Travis Laxton is at the middle school where I'm at, and whenever he put in a good word for me, and as soon as our very first day of work, I was in my classroom about 10 minutes, and Travis knocks on the door and says, "So, Coach Skip, man, what do you think about middle school wrestling?" And I'm like, "Well, that's definitely something that I'm interested in because it's enough to fill your need for it, but not so much that it will consume every aspect of my life."
you're in Walton County right now.
I just got officially hired 2 days ago. So,
Nah, dude, I live over here in Crestview, man.
oh, okay.
Oh, baby, we're about to have some collaborations going down.
Well, my daughter, she's over in Pace, and so we were just over that way yesterday, so that's pretty close.
Yeah, when we get off of this, let me know. I got an idea for you and your wife for Broke Teachers Travel, which everybody should check out Jeff and Marnie's travel show, Broke Teachers Travel. They are two broke teachers that love to travel.
So, how do they find Broke Teachers Travel? How do they find?
I guess you just go. My wife knows all of this. So just go search. We have a YouTube channel. We have all Facebook. All. But yeah, we've just started this about a year ago, and we go around and do everything on a budget. So that's it, and talk about our adventures.
But it can be done, people. You can travel on a budget.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we hit 8 national parks this summer. Flew from here to Vegas, and then rented a car and went to 8 national parks. Now the one thing I will say out there, being a native of Florida where everything's flat, everything is not flat anywhere else that I've been
Right.
in the far west, and switchbacks and all that stuff on mountains. Well, it's a different ball game. Maybe we need to have an unedited version of Brook Future Travel. Would probably have more viewers that way.
That's awesome, man. My wife loves to travel, but Lori's a little bougie. She likes to travel first class. She likes to, go to all these exotic islands and destinations, which, I've only been married to her for almost 3 years now. October, it'll be 3 years. We've been together like four and a half. But I was never a big traveler. And since I've been with her, I've done so many things that I never thought I would ever do, like jumping out of a plane, skydiving. She made me do, which I'm deathly afraid of heights, but we did it. It was awesome. Been in the Dominican Republic with her, which was incredible. Yeah, we've done a lot of cool things. Just got back from California, which was my first time or second time going there, but my first time was with her as well. So yeah, travel is an awesome thing. I wish I was traveling to Paris because in a couple of days starts the Olympics.
Yeah, we're excited about the Olympic wrestling, man. This year I was just looking at that, and we have the chance to do big things in men's freestyle.
Who would you say is our biggest possibility of bringing home a gold? Because everyone's saying Spencer. I think it's Kyle Snyder.
Yeah, Kyle Snyder I think is up there. There's three guys three folks when I was looking at the list the other day, that I think really have a chance, but Snyder's definitely there. Spencer, I hope, I think there's been years where you kind of look at it and, we've been on the uprise and we've kind of had some consistency here and there, but I think that, this year we have a strong team top to bottom. So, it's,
I think it's one of our best teams in a while.
Yeah, I think so.
I would say that Greco not so much. We don't do so well in Grecos right now.
Right. We had a South Florida kid almost make the Greco team. He lost. That was Sancho.
Right.
Alex or Alejandro Sancho. He goes by Alex from South Miami.
Right.
My middle son, Dylan, wound up wrestling that kid, but he's tough, man. And I think he trained with Nestor Verona, who's now up in Pennsylvania. But yeah, our freestyle, I think, will do much better than our Greco.
I tell you, I'm excited. I'm curious to see how Kennedy Blades is going to fare on the Olympic stage.
Didn't she just sign with Iowa?
Yeah. That's a good get for them.
Well, she'll be teammates with Val, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Iowa's women's team is going to have really good marketability the next couple of years. So I would imagine that we might see them become like the Penn State of women's wrestling.
Oh, I think so.
They've got
I think because they got Val at 100, they got or at whatever it is. They just got Kennedy Blades. Those are two, world level ladies right there.
Oh, they got more than that.
They're loaded, dude. It's gonna be
coach.
It's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah, with Calista trying. It's gonna be interesting to see the growth of women's wrestling. It's actually gonna be interesting to see wrestling growing in just period. So we haven't even talked about that 30 cap rule that just kind of got implemented with college. And there's a bunch of different ways to look at that. Not to segue into something completely different, but part of me sees the negative, but then part of me sees it as a positive because it's like, all right, well, you're not going to have 60 plus guys trying to go to Penn State now. You're going to have, dudes being like, all right, well, I'm going to get capped off. Maybe I'll go to this D2 school that was hitting me up, or maybe I might go to this D3 school, or maybe I'll go to that D1 school that isn't as known, and then they get that, that prospect that is there with the right coach, is there in the right time, has the right mentality, and then all of a sudden they're competing, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. I agree 1,000%. That 30 rule may definitely play into kids' decisions. Am I going to go to Penn State, or now that I know only 30 are there, do I want to go to another D1 school? Like a perfect example of a D1 school that somebody can step in, get that D1 experience. Franklin and Marshall, they're Division III for everything except wrestling.
Right.
They're D1
super
in wrestling.
expensive though, aren't they?
It is kind of pricey, but no different than anywhere else, really. But one of my Casey Thompson, we had him on the Morning Grind, the ex-pro wrestler.
Right.
His son Chase went to Franklin and Marshall. came back. He got injured. Now he's in the police academy. He's going to be a police officer, so he's got a bright future still. But he was only there for a year. But yeah, you can Division One. It doesn't have to be with this huge, program like Penn State. You can still, and again, there's nothing wrong with D2, 3,
Right.
JUCO, NAIA. We've discussed this before. If you're wrestling in college, you're a stud. I don't care what level it is.
Absolutely right. And you look at some of the guys that, for whatever reason, end up in a Division two or NAIA, whatever. I've some of the better kids that I've had, that went and wrestled in college, did that. And then, Colby Baker, he was one of those guys that here and there, and he was on one of the World Greco teams, and it's some cool stuff. But again, as long as if you're a good wrestler, man, eventually it's going to shine up, and you're going to have an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I mean,
100%.
I think it's one of those things too. You see more of a mindset now. I think people are being like, I just want to be a good wrestler. I want to be a better wrestler. I want to be a better wrestler, right? And I think that helps in the growth. I know for me, I know this was, terrible thinking. I was looking, I'm like, oh, well, if I don't go D1 or D2, I don't even really want to do it. Or like wouldn't be half into it, right? I went NAIA because the college I was going to was gonna go Division two. And then I get there and find out, damn, everybody in college is pretty solid. Like my first match was against a JUCO kid, and that dude looked like he weighed about 30 pounds heavier than me, and blast doubled me about 12 times. Right? I was like, okay, so maybe I need to get better before I discriminate against the other divisions.
Right.
And
It was,
I love that. You see this 4-time state champ come out and he's wrestling a JUCO kid and he gets it handed to him, man. I've seen that so many times. And a lot of
hey,
these
dude, I
JUCO
was on
kids
the
remember.
I was on the other side of that too.
That's what I'm saying.
I had a kid that a four timer from Georgia come in, a year later,
You
and
whooped
thought
them?
like bad. He was I cradled him up. It was bad, but I was just like, dude, it's gonna happen. I'm like, you're gonna get better. Like one of my teammates, my freshman year from my college years was, he teched me the first day, and then by the end of the season, I had that gap between like 3 or 4 points. I'm like, all right, that's improvement, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. And you got to remember, people forget this all the time. Just because a kid goes JUCO or D3 or NAIA does not mean he's not at the D1 level. Kids go other areas for reasons, maybe he didn't score high enough on his ACT, couldn't get in, so they told him, "Hey, go start JUCO and wrestle for a year, and then we'll snatch you up." Maybe he's coming off of an injury and he wanted to start out a little bit slower, not as tough. There's a million reasons. Look at Life University.
yeah,
Their whole squad is D1
oh,
guys
yeah.
or D1 level guys, and it is what it is, man.
And that's one thing that you can't say enough about summer wrestling and travel and things like that, because then I mean, one of the great epiphanies I had here is we were killing it up here in the Panhandle, and we were always winning, da da da, and had a kid that was 42-0 and with 42 pins, and I'm like, man, we go to state, and he went. I think he goes 2-2. He may have only went 1-2, but after that, I was like, screw this, man. We're gonna go wherever the best is, and that's how we
Yeah,
ended up driving that 11 hours down to Somerset, and
right.
and but I love my Ric Flair. To be the best, you got to beat the best, and you got to go where they're at, and that's
Yeah.
woo, yeah,
Woo! And that
that's it.
it does speak volumes about, competition and just because you're going 42-0 in the panhandle
Right.
does not mean you're going to go 42-0 everywhere else. Like you said, it's so important to get in front of those tougher kids. Not that the panhandle is not tough. I'm saying tougher kids that are grinding. Listen, it's not a secret. South Florida is where it's at right now. Has been for a long time. You got your Dade County teams, South Dade, Southwest, Southridge, whoever, Matter Lakes in the 1A, Somerset, now they're 2A, but all those schools are just tough.
Right.
So if you want your kids to get a taste of that, you got to travel, man. And it had to make it hard for you because it's not close.
No, it's people forget that Florida's the same size as Italy, so it's like going from the armpit of Florida where we're at down to the south. It's it's,
Did you just compare us to Italy?
yeah, it's the same size,
Size.
same size.
How dare you? This is Florida.
But it's but it's, our state's the same size as that entire country. and they don't have public transport. We don't have public transportation.
Oh God, I know.
On a train and took us down there instead of that 11-hour drive there and back.
Dude, Jeff, do you know how often I complain to Janet all the time? I'm like, I want a train that I can hop on in Crestview and go to Jacksonville and be there in like 4 hours. That's what I want.
That'd be awesome.
God, dude, it would.
I would jump on a train from Port St. Lucie to Niceville just to come do show stuff with you, man.
Hey, dude, we can't be talking about that stuff. That's weird.
All right, so I'm gonna take this into a different direction, being that you got us off track. Thanks, producer. Let's talk about the Olympics because it's coming up when, tomorrow or the next day? I think the 5th.
I think it starts today, don't it?
I think it's the 5th.
Let me check.
What's today?
Today's
3rd, 4th?
4th.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's the 5th.
You're probably...
You know, talking about Spencer Lee earlier, or bringing his name up anyways, at the 57 kilogram weight class, he's not even listed as one of the guys to, make it into the top 5. He's not even listed. He's listed as a, just like as a, like not a favorite, but like a dark horse.
Right.
That was the word I was looking for. So, they got Spencer Lee as one of the contenders or dark horses. You got the guy from Armenia, Uzbekistan, India, which the guy from India is pretty tough too. I don't know how to say his name. Herat, I don't know if I'm saying it right. But there's so many tough guys at 57 kilograms. And you know who the number one guy is? You know who's supposedly going to win the gold, according to Flow Wrestling? Ichik from Serbia. He's really, from Michigan, University of Michigan, but Serbia. He's wrestling for Serbia. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the Europeans, man, they just, it's always amazing stuff over there, and that entire area, in Western Europe has some, but the further east you go, generally the better the wrestling is over there, and that's just kind of an interesting take. But you want to see, it's kind of cool that of course I want us to win everything because that's part of our identity, who we want to be. You just see that great wrestling, but you see so many of those guys that, just like in every other sport, they come over here and they get trained up here and then go back and compete for their home country. But you see that in a lot of.
I would say the one thing that we're not talking about with the Olympics, though, is that wrestling is just a probationary sport this year.
Yep.
Like, we're not a lock for 2028. I don't know if a lot of people realize that.
I didn't even realize that. That's
ridiculous. So all the people boycotting the Olympics this year, like, I'm not gonna get into the opening ceremony stuff, but if you're gonna like forego it for that, remember that's gonna play in part.
Well, one of the things that with the whole international view of Russia was really instrumental in keeping it in, and that was one of the things that now they're kind of on that. They may not have the same that they had, but and I can't understand why in the world that. It would not. It's the oldest sport in the world. Why in the world would you?
Because we don't market it properly. That's what the problem is. With freestyle and Greco, they changed the rules at least back when I was doing it, it seemed every year it's like, oh, here's the new set of rules. It's like, that's not going to grow at one.
Right.
Two, it took us 30 freaking years to invest in women's wrestling. If we had done that back in the 70s, 80s, we probably wouldn't have this problem as well. We wouldn't have to be sacrificing men's weight classes for women's weight classes, which can't complain about that. Like, if you want to get on the board, you got to get on the board. Like, there's tons of things. And we're the type that want to like sit there and blame everybody else and be like, why are you going to take it out? It was one of the originals. It's like, okay, you can only rest on that for so long before you need to start improving your numbers. And like, I hate saying that because I love wrestling, even if it's freestyle or Greco or whatever. But if we're not going to do something to genuinely grow it, or if we're just going to argue going back and forth, I don't know what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? We have to have a self-awareness at some point. Like I said, I love, like with the women's thing, I love seeing all the articles, but there needs to be an article that says, hey, we dropped the ball on this 30 years ago. I'm glad that we have it, and we're going to like run with it full force now. Like, instead of just being like, oh, I can't believe that it's the fastest growing sport in the nation. It's like, yeah, it's not hard to grow it when you start from zero. You know what I mean?
And I think even one of the things that we could do as a nation is put it back in the curriculum for PE in middle school. Have a if we're going to have square dancing and whatever we have, just do a 3 or 4 week deal on wrestling. And I mean, I think it's so beneficial, but I also think that it's one of those things that at least in our society, I love collaboration. I love all of those things. But, what made us so great was rugged individualism that, we got to get things done when we've got to get it done. And wrestling is the greatest sport in the world to check somebody on that, to make sure that, you know, you could be a great coach, you could do whatever, but as a wrestler, you got to do your part. And there's so many moving parts. And, I think about when I watch NFL games and somebody scores a touchdown, immediately the two defensive backs point at each other. In wrestling, there's nobody to blame but yourself, man. You
Right.
get out there and get it done. And I think our society, we've tried to move away from it's my personal accountability and it's somebody else's fault. And so I think that if we put wrestling back in at a young level, that is something that's going to benefit the country in the future.
I was thinking about this, like so I have my kids doing rec soccer, and I'm like, how has there ever been like a rec wrestling league anywhere? Like, I'm obviously only one small part. You have to imagine like Pennsylvania, they run it. That would be a terrific thing.
Well, you go to, it's like, when you go to the tournaments around here, I love seeing the little kids, but you go somewhere like Pennsylvania, New York, Oklahoma, man, you've got at those little weekend tournaments, you got 600 or 700 kids,
Yeah.
and that's what, and I think that's the fundamental difference. But I just really wish in school as part of the curriculum that you could tie so much into wrestling. It's just nutrition, so many things that I think would benefit us as a future generation. Has its roots in wrestling, and I think.
Well, we gotta figure out something because I don't know if wrestling, if it's on the 2028, I think it's gonna be even further reduced. People are complaining about like 6 weight class. I'll tell you what I think is gonna happen, and this is something that I was talking with Wade Chalice on my other show, that I think we see Greco get axed, if I'm gonna be honest, because they already got judo in there, and Greco is basically just no gi judo.
Well,
Like honestly, a big kill, and it kills me to say, but if they decided to add like no gi like grappling or some kind of variation, freestyle wrestling would be very much in trouble because BJJ already knows how to market it. They market it so much more, so much better than wrestling does. It doesn't come down to entertainment factor. I don't believe. I think it comes down to a marketing. BJJ is lucky they had UFC one, and they're lucky that we didn't put Kurt Angle in there instead of Ken Shamrock. But I think that's where it is. You know what I mean?
right. Well, even with that, I mean, one of the things that MMA is absolutely crazy when you look at the success. I mean, if and at least with MMA, there is now some transition where you can go from being a wrestler to making a living. Where I think for 30 years when the government didn't subsidize anything, any of our athletes, now I think that kind of put us in a bad spot too. But now I think within the last 20 years that you look at how many of the Olympic champions have an MMA kind of opportunity to go do that. And, it's not a one for one on the skill set, but it is a huge part when you look at some of the guys that have had success in both. So.
Well, actually, dude, so this is something I had been echoing for a while, and me and Ricky got a series gonna come up with it. But someone actually is doing a pro folk style wrestling league. They put it together. They've had a couple showcases. They're working on rounding out their roster, but they're running it, man.
Now they tried to
Yeah.
do that a few years ago. Several.
Yeah.
It's not the same though. Everybody says that, and it was RPW was a weird, combination of freestyle and Greco, and then they had this weird power bar at the end, and it wasn't even so that did fairly well. It was just not marketed as properly, and they had a huge fire that set them back like weeks. They had to refilm, and so it's just one of those things. And then nobody picked it up and ran again instead of saying, "How can we learn from this and do it again?" And then just do it folk style, right? So like I said, it makes more sense because we already have that process in. It's like, oh, I wrestled in college. Now I'm gonna go and do it this way.
And, you got to get the correct sponsors, and you got to get some money. I mean, and that's the big thing. And like you said, marketing, and in the world of social media, I don't know. I know there's a lot of it out there, but I think that marketing's got to be a lot easier because it's easy to post stuff. I mean, I find myself watching wrestling videos all the time, and whatever the algorithm is that puts it on there. You Google one person, you're going to see 400 videos on them, and that's the cool thing. But I think you're absolutely right. It's so much about marketing, and we always talk about growing the sport and growing the sport, and collectively, I think we need some help from you know
You privatize it. That's what I say.
Privatize.
Privatize, private, seriously, like at this point, and I mean, like part of me was joking, but like as I kind of think about it, think about NIL where it's at right now and put 10, 15 years on that. We might as well just go ahead and privatize sports from the youth level all the way up to like, pros. I think that's in the direction that we're heading.
I've looked at it for years, and I've said in so many cases, there needs to be two divisions. There needs to be scholarships, and there needs to be athleticships, because there's you look at and I don't want to blast some guys, but it's they go there and they're not academics, they're not those things, but they bring in so much money, and then you have another group that is all academics, and they have nothing that they actually need to advance themselves because of the way the money works and everything. NIL is a game changer, and in Florida, supposedly, we could do that in high school, but there's still some rules about it, and it's really unclear. But we definitely, growing the sport and, advertising it and marketing it, man, that's the big thing, Jordan. I think you're absolutely right about it.
What is the reason, Jeff? Maybe you know the answer. What's the reason that Ivy League schools are not allowed to give athletic money? Is it because they want just like really high GPA kids attending?
Right.
Is that
I think it's one of those things that, it kind of taints the idea that you go to Ivy League school to, just academics, just those things. But then, you look at places that have, and there's some places out there, you look at the military academies, man, and you look at the level of athletics that they have there, and every one of those kids, man, are smart. Every one of those kids are disciplined.
yeah?
Everyone, there's no average people there. And,
Mm-mm.
and that's one of the things that, I think the whole country in the last, since I was a kid, we've settled for mediocrity. Everybody gets a trophy. We talk about that in my class all the time, and the kids laugh about it because we get to this point in world history where I'm talking about ancient Olympics and ancient sports, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's going to give that everybody gets a trophy deal." And I mean, and I get it. You want people involved, but you don't want to brainwash them into thinking that they're better than they are, and settle for mediocrity. I think, whenever I was in school, we placed top three. The fourth guy, he didn't get anything. And then, they went to five, and then the six. And I think this year in Florida, there's eight. And I mean, yeah, and I don't know.
Don't get Ricky started on that one. Yeah, that really grinds his gears.
It shouldn't be, in my opinion, for whatever it's worth, probably not much, but it shouldn't be top eight. You want top eight, then put 32-man brackets.
Exactly. I agree with that.
Here's my thing though. Don't measure yourself against the medal because I mean, I talk about it all the time. I got a state championship my senior year, but I had to work so much harder for the one my junior year because of the weight class I was in, because of the people in my bracket, because of the improvement I made from my sophomore year to my junior year. Like to me, that medal is, forged in adversity. My gold one is forged in, me just being on that weekend, and I don't think anybody was going to beat me. So I mean, they both mean a lot to me, but you got to find it for yourself. Even if it's just qualifying for state, like Ricky, you said you mentioned all the time about your son, but he went there twice, didn't see the podium, but he started something that ended up with a gold medal for your all's family. That's
Yeah.
something that. So that's one of the things. Like, if he had never started that, this wouldn't be possible. This wouldn't be here. So I have a kid on my Niceville team that he's working really hard. We're trying to like wherever he gets, we'd be like, all right, you worked for this, but also look what you started. Like, I wouldn't
Right.
have invested in Niceville's high school team had this kid not been showing up during the summer, or like one of the two kids showing up during the summer. You can never discount something, and it's hard for a lot of kids, I think, to see that in the moment. They're like, I didn't achieve my dreams, I didn't hit this or I didn't hit that, but they can't see the ripple effect, that
Process.
how far they went, or how far
Yeah.
they don't realize how much of an impact they made in that pond, that is that's their circle of influence, so to speak.
And that and that's great, and I understand all of that as a teacher, as education and a guy, but you don't want those guys to be delusional either. It's like when you go somewhere, it's like, man, it's tough, and that's the way it is. I look at some states that have just one classification, and I'm like, you want to know who's the best? That's the way you decide it. There's one classification, and it's like, well, it's not fair, it's this and that, and I'm like, wrestling's a little bit different, man. I think when you have a team sport where you have the variables are all changing, and you have to a team with 11 guys is a lot different than a team with 30 guys of replacements and stuff like that. But with wrestling, man, you just get out there and it's one on one, and there's I don't think that's a factor. I mean, when you look at Lake Highland Prep, and you look at how great they were and what they did and what classification they were in. But, I think they would have beat any classification in the state, most
Yeah.
of those years. And, same thing with Brandon when they were with, it didn't matter where they were at. I mean, the classification was irrelevant, but, I do think that, I like that people get the opportunity, but I think maybe expanding the bracket maybe I like that idea. If you're going to place that many, it gives more kids exposure to the tournament. So, if you're up here and you don't have some of those opportunities to travel and you're still the best, you have an opportunity. But I do hate that, in the ancient Olympics, number one guy got it, and he got a laurel wreath that died within a year, and that there was no gold medal, there was none of that. But it was just one of those cool things that you know that should always be the aspiration, is to be the best. And I think that it's really cool now, just looking at Olympic history, that you look back in the 30s and 40s, and there was no massive endorsement deals and things like that, but now there are. How many Olympians in wrestling have their own shoe brand, and how it's a lot different than even 30 years ago. But I think you guys are on the right track with doing some of those things to keep the integrity of the sport, while doing the same thing, Jordan, that I think you're absolutely right. You want people to buy in it. You want them to, it is an accomplishment to make it there. But what I've seen is so many people are just happy to make it there, that my goal is to make the state tournament. Your goal should always be to win it.
Win that, yeah.
And I think that anything else is just kind of bring this to mediocrity. That's just my take on it.
No,
Well,
you're 100% right. The worst thing to ever happen is that damn friggin' airbrush sweatshirt at the state tournament where everyone was putting state
oh
qualifier.
man, even
I
dude, yeah, that's
oh
so
my
that was my mentality back in the day. Like I would see people wearing it, and like I didn't. So I went all 4 years. I didn't get a shirt my freshman or sophomore year. I'm like, I don't want to remember this weekend. Like my freshman, I'm like, I cried literally. I went 0-2 after winning regions, and I had pink hair. I'm like, I cried that entire weekend. I don't want to remember that. You crazy? Like, but yeah, I was never a fan of that one.
dude, if
Like
you're gonna go out with pink hair, that's cool. I love it. But you better win.
well,
Pink
it
hair.
didn't. I didn't do it on purpose. I meant to dye it red, and then it came out pink because my stepmom, my hairdresser stepmom, who was like, "Oh, we gotta go this." I'm like, "Are you sure we should go this one? It looks a little darker." And she's like, "No, pink." And then, but I think that was another thing too, like exactly what you're on, Jeff, about like make wherever you're at, and we'll wrap it up after this if we kind of get our words on this, like. But I see like my goal was to be a four timer, and I loved some of my teammates my freshman year, but they kind of talked me down a little bit, especially when I got to the tournament. They're like, "Oh, you don't be scared. If you do this, you're fine, or don't be worried. You did everything." And like for me, the second I was there, I was like, "I'm fucking ready to go. I'm ready to beat everybody here." But then after hearing that for the entire ride down. And I know what they were doing. They were trying to protect me a little bit, but at the same time, that's not what I needed. I need someone that's like, you fucking go in there, be the first freshman state champion in Bay County history. And so by the time I got there, I let that moment get to me, where I think I talked myself down to be like, well, I just made it. That's all right. And I didn't realize till after I went 0-2, I'm like, yeah, this goal doesn't sit well with me at all.
One of the great moments, and it's you have all kinds of parents, man, out there, and I love them all, but they all come at you different, and I'll never forget this nice, sweet, meek mother, one of the sweetest people that I know. Her kid, man, we go down there, he goes 2 and out. She comes up in the stand and she is furious, and I'm like, oh God, man, she's coming to cuss me out about something. She has that sweatshirt, okay, with his name on it, so they qualify. And here's I came to state and I should get, and went 2 and out and threw at him, and I'm like, dang,
Wow.
and I'm like, but I think you need somewhere between that. You need the encourager, but the
Right.
parent too. That hey, you can't just get upset at the kid if you haven't done the things over the summers to make give those kids opportunities. And if we grow the sport, and like I said, it's so great when you, especially I see it in South Florida. You go to those summer tournaments, and there's a ton of kids here. Up here, I think a lot of people work really hard at doing that, and it's kind of crazy because where we are in North Florida, there's wrestling is growing in Georgia, it's growing in Alabama, it's growing in Mississippi. Dustin Paragon, you remember him? He's actually
Yeah.
coaching wrestling out in Mississippi, and he called me the other day and getting some contacts and said, I'm just really excited and I want to do this. And his brother just signed with West Point. Man, there's a lot of cool stuff going on, but it's to get not just wrestling coaches, to get the right guys in that care about kids, that check their ego, and I think, and I was mentioning earlier to Ricky that it's one of those things that I was never a great wrestler, so I never had to check. I have a huge ego about a lot of things, but wrestling is not one of them. So it's I think that you got to overcome about how good you were in anything back in the day, and it was tougher. I would definitely say that, but I think that sometimes young coaches, what they remember when they come in is that, man, how hard it was and how hard coach was on us, and they take that, and that's the only part they remember. And I think that it's a lot of one of the things that I've really tried to do as a coach is you look at guys that are good hard workers, and sometimes you got to coach them up, not only just wrestling, but how to be a leader and how to do those things and how to handle situations. And I think a lot of times, because of the way wrestlers are built mentally, I think that we don't do a great job of that, because it's like, well, you should, you got to, and you do have to do those things. But if there's a kid that's just kind of an introvert, I think about a guy like Brock. Man, Brock was a great wrestler for me, but he was one of those guys that I'd have to tell him, Mr. Brock, man, hey, when we talk to the team, you need to do this. Coach Skipper doesn't need to be the guy that does this. This is your team. And Richie, he was kind of the same way. It's like, man, you're the captain. You've got to use it's one thing coming from the coach. It's another thing coming from the guy that's out there to respect in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to mention one thing to any wrestler that's watching this show right now. Qualifying for the state tournament, trust me, not ragging on you. That is an incredible accomplishment. I'm just saying, don't settle for that.
Right.
Don't be satisfied with being a qualifier, because there's so much higher that you can go. So basically, what I'm telling you is grind for greatness.